Hello, everyone, and welcome to the new episode of Entrepreneurship Lab. This is your host, Nevena Bajalac, welcoming you to the new episode where we help you grow and scale your business. Today, we have a special guest. He is international entrepreneur. You can find him in Dubai. You can find him in Singapore, so many places. And his name is Callum Laing. And Callum is a best-selling author of several books. He's going to talk to us about that. He's founder of Veblen Director Program, which helps startups get the first-time board experience. And this is a very interesting topic for all of you. And also he funded several different companies and corporations, and he's a perfect guest to help and share with us how to navigate international markets. So Callum, thank you for being here today and helping our audience learn how to grow their business.
Yeah, pleasure. It's good to connect, and it looks very nice where you are with the breeze going through the green trees in the background. I like that.
Yeah, it's currently in Zanzibar, escaped Dubai summer for a couple of months. So tell us
Sensible.
a little bit more. I would love to ask you a little bit more about your beginners. How did you started as entrepreneurs? Because often I have guests who are very successful, and then it may be intimidating for some of the listeners, like they're there, but everyone started somewhere. Everyone made a lot of mistakes, even failures, and that's part of the process. So tell us a little bit about your journey as entrepreneur. Where you started? You started and founded so many companies, so we kind of learn a little bit more about you.
Sure. So, look, I started hustling as a kid, and had various little ventures from cleaning cars to selling ice creams to local restaurants to anything and everything to make a bit of extra money. My first grown-up business was a recruitment company at the height of the dot-com boom. So putting internet engineers into telcos, which I thought was it did very well, and I thought that was because I was very talented. When the bubble burst, I realized I wasn't nearly as talented as I thought. But I kind of had the entrepreneurial bug by then. Uh, or to put it a different way, nobody would hire me once I'd started my own company. And so I just kept building businesses. I've been out in Asia for nearly 25 years. Um, Made every mistake going, lost multiple businesses, built companies up, destroyed hundreds of millions of shareholder value, built them back up again. And for the last 10 years, I've really been focused on taking small businesses public. So putting groups of small businesses together under a public wrapper, which we keep the founder in control of their business. So it's their brand, it's their culture, it's their hiring and firing, but they get all the advantages of being in a public company. So that's kind of the day job. And as a part of that, I was sitting on a lot of boards. I was advising a lot of boards. I was hiring and firing directors. And what I realized was that the kind of the boardroom experience hasn't really changed much in 100 years. It's very exclusive. It's very male dominated. And there's a lot of people on boards for the wrong reasons. And there's a lot of very talented people that aren't getting on boards because they don't look the right way, or they're the wrong gender, or they don't go to the right schools, or they haven't got the right connections. Um, and as an entrepreneur, that just frustrates me, seeing talent overlooked. So a couple of years ago, created Veblen Director Program, really to help people get their first board seat. And I'm a huge believer, having been an entrepreneur for 25 years, it's incredibly difficult being an entrepreneur. And so putting a board, at the very least, a board of advisors around you to help you very early on in the process is a great thing to do. And I also think it's great for entrepreneurs to sit on other people's boards so they can kind of get the learning of what other companies are doing. So that's kind of what keeps me busy at the moment.
Yeah, and that's a very interesting concept, and I think very helpful concept, like you said, both for entrepreneurs and then for the company as well. So can you tell us a little bit more about process? Let's say our listeners, they might be interested, like how can you become a board member? Do you invest financially? What investment range are we looking at? Of course, depends on the company as well. And then also if they have a company and they think to bring board members to their company, how they can do that.
Yeah, so let's look at it from the sort of the average entrepreneur. Let me start with a statistic, which is kind of the explains this quite well. So there's over 330 million companies in the world, and less than 1% of them have an active functioning board. And yet every single successful company you can think of has an active functioning board. And so there has to be a reason why successful companies have boards and aspiring companies don't have boards. And I think for most entrepreneurs, we tend to assume that a board is something that you only have when you're a big company and you need lots of money and it costs a lot to bring in these board members. What I discovered very early on in my entrepreneurial career was it doesn't need to be like that. You can build an advisory board around you, and I became very good at building advisory boards around me. Now, at the time, I didn't even know they were called advisory boards. At the time, I was just taking more experienced entrepreneurs out and trying to get them drunk and learn their secrets. And that was basically the extent of my strategy. Now we call it an advisory board. It sounds much better. But basically, what you can do as an entrepreneur is go and find people, and there's actually some very, very good people that work in corporations. So for example, I had somebody that was a middle manager at Microsoft, bored out of their mind in their day job, always aspired to be an entrepreneur, but didn't want to pull the trigger. And so they could come and I said, look, would you mind meeting me for a coffee once a month, sit on my advisory board? I can't pay you. Yeah, maybe in the future I can give you some stock, but right now it's just free. Now, for this board middle manager, it was the most exciting thing that ever happened. Like that now they could live vicariously through me. And they had something to talk about at dinner parties that they were sitting on the advisory board of a exciting young startup. And so it was great for them. To be honest, the advice I got from that I had somebody from Microsoft on my board. So then I could go, it was much easier to get other people on my advisory board because I've already got somebody from Microsoft. They didn't know whether it was the janitor or the CEO of Microsoft. It was just somebody from Microsoft. And I was able to raise money. It was much, much easier to raise capital for my business because ultimately I had somebody from Microsoft, I had someone from Google, I had someone from Yahoo sitting on my board. And so that makes you a much less risky proposition. Um, so I think that's it doesn't need to cost you any money. It's pretty easy to do. And then on the other side of things, I think even if you're a one-man band, even if you're a brand new startup, you're just at the ideation phase, it's worth putting a board of advisors around you. So when I start a new company, I always start with a board of advisors before I get customers, before I get staff, because they can save me so much time and so many mistakes. And um, when I say to entrepreneurs, you should go and sit on the boards of other companies, they all say, well, look, I'm too busy. I'm already like I've got so much stuff going on in my own company. I'm putting out fires every day. I haven't got time to think about somebody else's company. But actually, it's super, super valuable because we know that our own company is held together with chicken wire and masking tape. And yet when we look at everybody else's company, it always looks like it's running so smoothly and it's so good. Um, Yet when you go and sit on the board of another company, you discover that actually every company is held together with chicken wire and masking tape. Um, but they've solved some of the problems that you haven't yet solved, and they're struggling with some problems that you possibly have solved. And so you can help them, but you can learn from them. Plus, you get to sit on the board with inspiring other people, and that builds your network and it builds your credibility. And so when you're trying to recruit staff or when you're signing up new clients, the fact that you're not only the founder of a company, but you sit on the board of other companies gives you a lot more credibility. And I think there's a lot about status, which as entrepreneurs, the thing that we're trying to do the most is build trust quickly. We need our clients to trust us. We need our investors to trust us. And so one of the ways you can do that is by increasing your status or tying yourself to brands that are bigger than you. And so in the world of Instagram, standing next to a Lamborghini or having a nice watch, that gives you high status. But as an entrepreneur, we live in LinkedIn, and on LinkedIn, having a board seat is what gives you high status. So that's it. It's definitely worth doing it for all the opportunities that come to you afterwards.
Thank you. And I mean, thank you for that's why it's so powerful being surrounded with entrepreneurs, like you said, who solve certain problems. And for me, always interviewing different entrepreneurs or experts in some areas, you always learn something new. And I mean, so many of us never thought to offer people, hey, come be on my board. And you can find people who just, like you said, they're looking for some kind of excitement and they're happy to help you. And because we always, when we're starting, we're thinking, oh, I don't have money for that. How much, people will ask me for a 25% of my company and these things, but it doesn't have to be necessarily that way. And yes, statistics are very interesting that actually all successful companies have boards, but we as startups, we kind of don't. And we think, yeah, we have to get there and then we will have a board. So I think you opened and gave us a lot of ideas for all of us to think about. And this can build, like you said, trust and credibility so much faster. So tell us, Callum, now you worked in so many international markets. How do you see now international markets, differences between different markets, Asia, Middle East, Europe, and how companies and startups can navigate and maybe use and learn how to benefit from different markets?
Yeah, look, it's kind of weird because I was born in New Zealand. I grew up in the UK. My first job and my first business was in Holland, and then Ireland, and then I've been in Asia for 25 years, and I have an office in Dubai. So to me, I've always kind of been global in outlook, and I think that's a lot easier to do now than it was 25 years ago. If I look at the Veblen Director Program, so I set that up 18 months ago. It's already doing $1 million a year and up. Our CFO is in Melbourne. I'm based in Singapore. My CEO is based in the UK. My COO is based in Portugal. Most of the team is dotted around all over the place, and our office is in our kind of office is in Dubai. So, and I haven't met half the team in person. In fact, our CEO, I knew her for 20 years, but I hadn't seen her in like 18 years. Hired her to be my CEO, and then I met her for the first time in 18 years. Like, she'd been working for me for 6 months before I met her in the UK. So look, to my way of thinking, all businesses should be thinking global from day one. Like the resources that you can get by outsourcing, the talent that is available if you look globally is just unbelievable. And it's the same, my thinking with board seats. So a lot of people that do want to get on boards, they apply for boards in their local area. But since COVID, most board meetings happen over Zoom. So you can be anywhere in the world. And by definition, there's a lot more opportunities in the rest of the world than there is in your local neighborhood. So I think if you can switch your mindset so you're not constrained geographically, and you can start to say, well, look, all of these different regions have different talents and different skill sets, and there's some incredible talent coming out of South Africa that you can get right now, and the Philippines is great for graphics, and the Middle East is really good for wealth and light. So all of these different areas. And then the planet becomes your playground, and it's a much more fun way of doing business rather than sort of a very nationalistic kind of approach, which doesn't make much sense to me anymore.
So I would like to ask you, I love when my guests share some kind of mistakes. You mentioned that you lost a lot of money previously. So if you look into, all of those mistakes, they were learning experiences, of course, but would you share with us some of the mistakes you did, something you wish you knew, but you didn't at the time, that can help everyone listening? Maybe something very unusual, or you wish somebody told you about much, much earlier when you started?
So let me tell you a funny story. So I have been with my wife for 25 years, 26 years, and she's a primary school teacher. She thinks what I do is crazy. She like it's risky. Like she doesn't understand it. So we don't like well obviously we've been together for a long time, but I tend not to talk too much about the highs and lows of what's going on in the day job because it's so far removed from the teaching world. Anyway, in one of the books that I wrote a few years ago, it was called Entrepreneurial Investing. I talked about the fact that we had taken a company public and we had grown it to a market cap of $300 million, and then we got attacked by white collar criminals, and basically 250 million euros was destroyed almost overnight. And anyway, I tell this story fairly early on in the book. I never really had this conversation with my wife, and I didn't really think about it. Wrote the book. We got a bunch of books delivered. I've got a couple of kids. I think the eldest was about 10 or 11 at the time. So the box arrives. I give a book to my kid as sort of a present. I forget that they're now at an age where they can actually read and understand stuff. So anyway, I give this book. I take a phone call and I just wander off into one of the other rooms and I just hear I hear this one of my daughters just go, "Mummy, did you know Daddy had lost $250 million?" Oh no. So that was how my wife found out that about that particular loss-making experience. Um, Yeah, look, I think there's you make so many mistakes. I'm also not particularly bright, so often I have to make the same mistake a couple of times before I get the lesson really sinks in. Um, I think probably the piece that has been the most useful for me is not trying to do, and probably the lesson that took me the longest to learn is not trying to do everything yourself, but try and surround yourself with smarter people than you. So obviously advisory boards is a great way of doing that. For the last 10 years, my business partner, Jeremy Harbour, and myself, we've taken, we've created well over $500 million in market cap and shareholder value, taken over 100 companies public. Neither of us could have done it on our own, but together we work much better. When I create new businesses now, so I'm just starting a new one around raising capital, I do it with a CEO in mind. So I know that actually I'm quite good at starting stuff. I'm very bad at running stuff. And so rather than kind of build it until it frustrates me, I now find great people and put them in right at the beginning. So look, a lot of this stuff you just kind of have to go through the hard yards and make the mistakes. But if you stick at it, it does eventually seem to shake itself out, and you get some great stories along the way.
Yeah, and knowing your weaknesses, like you said, what's your strength and what's your weakness, it takes us a while. I think as entrepreneurs, we always want to do everything on our own. And but I want to ask you with regards to that. I mean, I noticed that female, like women, they love to network and they love to support each other. And I see that like in Dubai, like, so many female groups. And from your experience as a male, you're saying now you guys are partnering up and you're understanding, hey, let's support each other, admitting your weaknesses. But I think, is it still popular in the business world? I feel like still men are not willing to say, hey, I'm not good at this, right? So sometimes men go through the wall because I don't know if it's an ego or not wanting to admit that they're not good at something, and not wanting to ask for help. I think in many cultures, men struggle with asking for help. And when you need a coach, consultant, advisory board, it's actually you open up saying, hey, I don't know this, I need help. And I see that you obviously open, but were you like this from the beginning, or is something you learned? And do you see this trend still happening among male entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think look, I think it's an entrepreneurial thing rather than a male or female thing, because I think as an entrepreneur, you have to live with this weird duality in your mind where you have to get people to trust you. So you have to try and convince someone to give up their safe job and come and work for you, even though you know that you haven't got enough money to pay them at the end of the month. But you kind of hope that you can then convince a client to pay because you've now got this new person coming in. And so you have to project a level of unreasonable confidence. At the same time, you're absolutely right. You need to be able to leverage off other people. You need to be able to get that help. And I think, look, I tried way too long to keep it, do everything myself, and yeah, took me too long to learn that lesson. But I think yeah, I think if you look at any successful entrepreneur, they are very good at leverage, and leverage is basically just using other resources, and whether that's outsourcing to a different country, whether that's finding a business partner, whether that's having advisors that, you know, one bit of advice can save you going down, wasting a year of your life following a dead end. One connection from an advisor can completely transform your business. One connection from an advisor could give you an investor that changes the trajectory of the company completely. So I think once I kind of got clear on what I was missing out on by trying to do everything myself, that's when I really started to make the big leaps. And actually, the most useful question I found was, as an entrepreneur, we tend to ask the question what a lot. So we're constantly kind of asking what or how, like, okay, how do I make salaries at the end of the month? Or like, what do we do next to go? And the problem with that is you're asking yourself these questions, and you don't know the answers, otherwise you wouldn't be asking the questions. So I found every time I found myself kind of stuck on a question, I would then change it to a who question. And the who question is always, who already knows the answer to this? Who already has our client base that I could work with to get my product in front of them? Who would benefit the most if I'm successful at this and would be interested in helping me get there? And once you start asking those who questions, it suddenly opens up a whole bunch of doors, and that was quite a useful sort of transformation for me.
Yes, thank you for sharing that with us. So I would love to hear a little bit more where our listeners can get your books. You have several books. Can you tell us what are the names of the books, and can they get them on Amazon? Definitely for those who love to read more and get some advice and interesting stories, how you lost $250 million and many other stories for sure. So tell us a little bit more about your books.
So look, I write the books to help people, and also to kind of help clarify ideas for myself. So the first one I wrote was called Progressive Partnerships, and it's really designed for startups. So if you are early stage, it's how you grow by partnering with other people, and how you build networks and how you monetize networks. So that's Progressive Partnerships. The next book I wrote was with my business partner, Agglomerate, which was all about how we put together companies and take them public. So that was my kind of more for grown-up companies. And then Entrepreneurial Investing was more for investors, about how to invest in small companies. And then my most recent book is called Boardroom Blueprint, and that is obviously about how to get your first board seat. If you go to callumlaing.com and join my newsletter, you can actually get copies of all those books for free. Bezos has enough money on Amazon. I don't think he needs any more. And yeah, I would rather you were using the knowledge than not. So if you go to callumlaing.com and sign up for the newsletter, you'll get copies of all of those books.
And that's amazing. So we're going to invite all of you listening, go to callumlaing.com, and you just got a gift, so 3 books. So thank you for that, Callum. I mean, it was so much value from you already, and plus the books, I'm going to definitely go and read. I always love to read every week some new books. And thank you for being here with us.
My pleasure. It's been fun. Thanks, Navina.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Make sure to follow Callum Laing on social media. Please download this episode, subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. Give us some likes, comments. Tell us what would you like to hear next in the podcast, and share this episode with at least one person that can benefit from this information. Thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next episode.